Welcome to Directionally Correct, a Felix podcast with Cole and Scott. Today's guest, nobody.
There you go.
There we go.
I love it.
Thanks to our sponsors, Pollinode. Harness the full power of organizational network analysis with Pollinode. With one-click data integrations and built-in relationship-based surveys, Pollinode enables people analytics practitioners to move from data to insights faster. To learn more and see why Pollinode is trusted by some of the most innovative companies in the world today, book a demo at pollinode.com/directionally correct. All opinions are our own and do not reflect those of any other organization.
Okay, so he gives them a bump for the age of the restaurant, which I guess is a proxy for quality.
Yeah, but like even
yeah.
if it tastes shitty, he will give them a bump for the how old it is. It's like that makes no sense. And the second thing is he likes like little frou-frou stuff that they put on it sometimes. Like they'll put like salad or something. He's like, oh, this is so great. They're trying like, no, I want a pizza. You know?
So he likes crispy but like kind of floppy crust, right?
Well, he penalizes for floppy.
I'm with him on that. Like if it were like
Yeah.
on a freaking cracker, like 100%.
I just I guess you could say I just like a more traditional like pizza, and he's like, and the thing is he's not consistent with it either. Like some places he
He's got
penalizes
reliability issues here.
Yeah, like some places he penalizes for being frou-frou, and other places he gives them additions for being frou-frou. I'm like, no, consistently pizza. Like that's what I'm looking for. I don't like the floppy ones either. I like but he always talks about the undercarriage and like how like the undercarriage. I was like, I've never rated a pizza for its undercarriage.
Well, I mean, if you're going to go into the pizza rating business, like you got to start getting pretty technical, right?
Yeah, but they are fascinating, and there's a lot of it's kind of like pizza ratings, but also man on the street at the same time.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of like people that come by, and like the owners of the restaurant know it like makes or breaks their restaurant rating.
Yes.
So they like come out and watch, and there's a lot of like funny interactions because of that. It's very human.
I've noticed what you were talking about as far as like you love Johnny's Pizza here in Seattle. So I think the food in Seattle is pretty much trash, like across the board.
They don't have any like regional things that they're known for that are good.
Well, you would think, okay, I'll explain. But yes, you would think that they would have great, like, say, seafood.
Yeah.
Or they do have good Asian food. A lot of great Thai restaurants. They're known for teriyaki, this sort of thing. But what I've noticed is like traditional foods, burgers, pizzas, like chicken fried steak or something like that. I think that people here, that they grew up on a certain way that the food was prepared. And therefore come to like the way it's prepared here. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's good, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's just
like they don't use spices either. There's no flavor here whatsoever.
I would not even try a chicken fried steak from Seattle. Like, I would just know.
Well, here it's a breakfast food. In Texas, it's a dinner, right?
Yeah.
So it's always served with eggs. Yeah. Oh, I never told you this. You're going to love this. I found a good old country shack or a breakfast sort of brunch place. I don't know. It's like south of downtown, but they had shrimp and grits. I was like, I've been missing me some shrimp and grits. Go get me some shrimp and grits. Ordered it up. Fantastic. They bring it out, and yes, it's traditional shrimp and grits, but because it's a breakfast food here, they put scrambled eggs right on the top in the middle of the shrimp and grits and put like gravy on top of it. And it's like
two different dishes in one dish.
And the actual food was good, but it's like, why'd you ruin this? You're like, I made the masterpiece and I just ruined it by putting scrambled eggs right on top.
I feel like something a child would make.
Well, it's all going to the same mouth hole and the same, belly eventually. So why not just put it all together?
Yeah, I guess.
But yes, you'll talk to people and be like, I got to get back to Seattle because I just love the way they make their food at, Restaurant X. It's like, really? Because I don't.
Well, I always thought they were known for, like the seafood, like, clams and oysters and all that kind of stuff. And so I'd always thought that was like the thing.
You would think so. But like if we're going to get seafood around the country, I'm thinking Boston first, really.
Boston is good. It's really good. Yeah. You're not wrong.
I guess it depends. Like, so if you're talking like crabs, you're talking like Boston. If you're talking, not that crawfish is necessarily seafood. I guess it is.
Land food.
Yeah, it's little bugs.
Yeah. They're essentially like underwater bugs. You're right.
What's it about? Oh, sorry. What's it about Johnny's Pizza though?
I think they
Is it
just
the
have
undercarriage?
not the under. They do have a good constitution, I would call it. Like it's.
What does that even mean?
It means it's like it's got a good ratio of like cheese, meat, sauce, and bread. Like it's just got a good, and it's pretty consistent like all throughout the pizza. Like I don't like a pizza like in different areas. It's like different cooked layers. Like
Oh yeah.
Like I don't need any of that business.
You gotta get that sweet the swamp, man.
Yeah.
I just remember the commercials.
We actually just found a new pizza place by our new house that we really like, and I've been super pleased because I have found a big struggle of getting good pizza in Dallas. And so we found one. I'm like, all right, we're getting it like once a week now.
You got to keep them in business, right? Once you find something good.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of like IO, or I guess you go like people analytics sort of concepts around a restaurant. So the food is maybe 5-10% of the recipe of a successful business, right? Everything else is about managing people, staying on top of the books, advertising, just making sure you just deliver a consistent product, all these sort of things that are not related directly to the food.
Yeah. So this is a funny thing because I've actually worked in a few restaurants and I still feel like I know very little about what it makes to make a restaurant successful, like at all. And so there's clearly a formula to it. I just am unaware.
I watch a lot of Bar Rescue, and apparently a lot of the formula is like keeping your employees from stealing from you.
That's probably true. There's probably a lot of leakage, in different kinds of restaurants.
Oh yeah, especially when your margins are super thin.
Yeah. You know what I did the other day? I've never done this before. I don't know if they have it in Seattle. I tried curling for the first time. Do you know what curling is?
Ice curling?
Yeah, ice curling.
In the 2012 Olympics, I made the proclamation that like I could do this, and I would just put a beer on the ice next to me, and I could like at least come in third.
Well, it's definitely a beer drinking sport. Like that's
this is amazing, sir. Like, okay, they have a curling rink in Dallas?
So they don't. They're and if you want to contribute to it, because they're trying to build one, they're raising funds right now. But a friend of mine who happens to be kind of in the people analytics space, her name's Fran. She's I guess from the Midwest somewhere, and she's kind of a transplant to Dallas. And she is like one of the leaders in this local group, and they practice where the Dallas Stars practice. And so they
Star Center.
Yeah. So get it like late at night and stuff. But they're trying to build a rink, but they did one of these classes to like teach you how to do it. And I figured out why I like it off the bat. I didn't realize. So golf and curling were both invented in Scotland in 500 years ago or something like that.
Right.
And golf was the summer sport and curling was the winter sport. So it's the same people, like beer drinking, idiosyncratic, very high accuracy, kind of weird game that you play. But just one happens to be on ice and the other's on grass. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. So I went to the class and I liked it so much. I went to one of the first nights of the league, and man, it was a lot of fun. And it's hard. You have to get into a full, what do they call it? Not squat, lunge. And you're sliding in a lunge down the ice. And it is as difficult as that sounds to do. But it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of like camaraderie aspects to it too, which I thought were cool because it's a team sport. But I really enjoyed it.
I want to be able to slide on like one foot the way they do. They push off with like the shoe with I guess the gripper and the one that has the slide. And it looks like a badass move.
It's no joke, man. And some of these people, they are so flexible. Like they can
in curling?
Yeah, like they are so flexible. Their head will be like 6 inches off the ice for like a good 20-yard slide. And I'm like, I don't have that kind of flexibility. I'm like, my head's probably 3 feet above the ice.
Wait, why? Okay, so like they I guess go off
you're trying to
the
aim it.
block. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're trying to aim it. And so it's kind of like a pool player looks down the pool cue. So they get really, really low so they can look down the ice and guide it the way the direction they're wanting it to go.
The sweeping would be, I figured, the workout of the whole thing. You
Oh,
never
yeah.
mentioned that.
It's straight up. You're going to be sweating. Yeah. The thing I really learned, because I had not spent really any amount of time on ice in my life growing up in Louisiana. This is my first time. I thought I was going to bust my butt the whole time I was out there sweeping, just going down the ice. Sweeping's not hard at all. It's just a workout. Like, I thought I was going to fall all the time. It's I never fell even once.
It's a pretty amazing sort of concept that, like, you were essentially melting the ice in a certain direction for the, what would you call it, the stone? I think it's just called a stone, right?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that's what it is.
The puck? I don't know what that thing's called.
No, it's a stone, because that thing's like legit heavy.
It's granite, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, what amazing concept that you can just like sort of like casually move the trajectory of this thing to be, strategically placed.
Well, it's one thing, again, a lot of relationships to golf. In golf, they talk about break all the time on the green.
Yeah.
And you don't even realize like how many imperfections are in the ice that send the stone in different directions, even without sweeping.
Just like ruts from
yeah.
Hockey will rut the ice like crazy.
Yeah, and so it's very challenging because you have to be aware of like where the bad patches of ice and stuff like that. It was very fascinating.
I'm not a golf guy, but I don't think I shared this with you, but I was invited to St. Andrews this March or April.
Really?
So yeah, I'm going to go to Edinburgh and up to Scotland to go check it out. I don't even give a shit about golf. It's totally wasted on me. I'm just going to look at it and be like, that's an open field, man. There you go.
Well, it is beautiful. Like, not just the golf course, but that area. Well, I mean, I've watched on TV a bunch. And
Gotcha.
Like, and I mean, it's one of the most beautiful areas in the entire world, like so I mean, that's gonna be fascinating just for that reason, just being in an old, like, thousands of year old town, stuff like that. That'd be, I hope you have a good time with it. What's the occasion?
A buddy of mine and his group, they're big golfers, and he's like, hey, we're going, do you want to get, because he knows like all international travel. He's not much of an international traveler. I was like, hell yeah, I love Edinburgh. I will be there.
Well, that's I may be making this up, but I'm pretty sure this is right. That's a big get. Like, people have to sign up like years in advance to get that, and so that's really cool that he invited you.
He broke it down for me, and like, forgive me if I get the details wrong, but it was something like a buddy had an inn there, and then they are going for like 5 days, and you're entered in a lottery every day, so they expect to go at least twice, but they could go as many as like 4 times, something like that. But yeah, it's some sort of daily lottery. So I guess you just got to sit by the door with your clubs and just wait.
My uncle's done it. He's a big golfer, and he said the only thing that's unenjoyable about it is they rush you. Like, they have you on a stopwatch. They're like, nope. Like, you hit your ball out. You're like, nope, too bad. You walk on to the next hole. Sorry.
We're not looking at the break on the green today. You're moving on.
Keep going, because they're trying to get as many people through as possible.
Yeah. Here, speaking of like getting people through here, I'll cover up the important bits. Check out this like ridiculous photo they did. Oh, you can't really, I don't know if it comes through.
It's not very clear, but it does look like that you're on like the moon or something.
Yeah, I mean, I approved a photo, and then they like put like a mask over it, so I look like the whitest. I'm gonna go to Scotland, so I mean, I'll fit right in. I'll be clear.
Yeah. I don't know if you have any Scotch heritage, but maybe.
Oh, very much so. Like, I when I landed in Scotland, I looked around, I was like, these are my fucking people. Oh my god! Like, look at everybody. They're like blonde hair, blue eyed. Like, they just look. They're my height. It's like this is what's been going on. I just didn't know it.
Like, are you my cousin?
Like, we're probably all related. Yeah. Never mind the fact I can't understand anything that you say, even though you're speaking English.
So, how bad is it really? Like, is it truly that bad, or is it just like the real yokel locals that are like that or something?
I think that I think that I process a lot of information while people are talking. Therefore, I miss like even just standard Americans talking. And like, let's just like try and put that with cognitive load of trying to understand somebody in another
Yeah.
country. Yeah, it's tough. It can be tough.
Okay.
There's some people with like a thick accent. You're like, I have no idea, man. No idea what you just said.
That's fascinating. I wonder, yeah, like, is that, do you think there's anywhere else on Earth that speaks English but is more difficult to understand?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where?
New Orleans. New Orleans.
That's a different, yeah. You're not wrong.
You're like, yeah, sure, man. Like, I guess we're both speaking English, but you're on a different planet for sure. This is just totally not the same.
That's fair.
I need a Scotsman to talk to a Cajun guy.
They're
And record
essentially
it.
speaking different languages at that point. Like, you could say the phylogenetic tree of languages has split already.
Phylogenic. I love it. I love it. King Philip came over for good sex. That's a kingdom, phylum, class, order, species. That's how you understand the phylogenic order.
I must not learn that. Was that a acronym or something?
Yeah.
Oh, fascinating. Never heard that one.
So now you can classify anything.
Cool. Do you remember what the differences are between those?
Well, kingdom, like your animal kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
No. After that, no.
It's easy. You can just say no.
I know
we
at the
can
very
bullshit our way through it.
the very bottom end, you have like all your Latin phrases, and you'll get like a specific plant, and they start classifying the plants kind of like how they look, and it'll be like, well, we'll say it's plant X, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Plant X, droopy leaves, and like whatever the word for droopy leaves is in Latin, and like that's what that plant's name is now, and it's like Felis mogatus, or whatever it is, and it's like, well, this one's got like perky leaves, so it's like same plant, just kind of like raised leaves, and that's how it's done.
That's fascinating, huh?
Anyway, like we've totally, I don't even know where we've gone today. This is awesome.
We're all over the place, man.
You got something here, man?
Well, I was wondering, we had talked about, I don't know if you've got some ideas here, but I only got one, of a guest wish list.
A guest wish list.
Some folks that we probably don't, I don't even know if we could get them on the pod, but might be fun to have if we could ever have them. Do you have anybody you'd like to have on?
Guest wish list. I would like, it's like different classes, right? If you start thinking about people like different classes, like one is like your IO psychs, right? So, and we've had like Fred Oswald on, we've had a few other folks, and they've been absolutely fantastic. Probably the ones I've enjoyed. Everyone's a favorite, but perhaps some are most favorites. Let's put it that way. So like more of those type of guys, but I mean, I think we could also like go for like public figures. Like just go, like, what if we had like Kim Kardashian on? Just like have her talking about her business.
I just don't know enough about like that. I just don't follow that stuff to ask good questions. Maybe you do, but
me neither. Yeah, that's the point. That's the point.
Like, it would be really basic. Like the fans of hers would hate me asking such basic questions.
It would be great to get world leaders on. I mean, are we talking like dream list, or are we talking like practical could get?
Well, yeah, we can talk dream list. I mean, this is our podcast. We can talk about whatever we want.
From like a practical standpoint, like I think we should have more economists on. I think I don't think we've ever really talked to a behavioral scientist. I don't believe. Not that I remember.
Yeah, I don't think we have. Maybe, yeah, that might not be a bad idea.
I don't think we ever talked to a BSci, and just to understand the differences, because they do a lot of overlap with IOs, and they do a bit of overlap with economists, but They have a specialized field and specialized skill set that we haven't really explored.
Yeah.
And then there's like other like segments. Like I don't think we've ever talked to anybody about training, like in depth or like.
That's not an accident.
Yeah, that's fair.
I find that stuff pretty boring, to be honest with
you tune out in the training. We had someone from the government on. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I think about people in like general categories.
Yeah. My
What about you? Yeah.
I was thinking one name, and I could probably think of some names on the fly in terms of those things you just mentioned, because that would be fascinating. Is Herman Aguinis. I've cited. I actually have an article that he's an author on today to talk about too. But he's just like such a powerhouse researcher. And I had this funny thing happen in grad school. It wasn't me, but it was somebody else in my cohort. They thought they couldn't. We had an argument, like the whole group, about how do you pronounce his last name. And there was this group of people who literally thought his last name was pronounced Aguinis.
No.
And so somebody actually called his office on the phone just to hear his answering machine to know how to pronounce his last name. And he picked up the phone and goes, "Hi, Herman Aguinis," and they just hung up on him because they were like, they heard his last name. And so sorry, 15 years ago or whatever, when Herman, if you're listening, when you got a phone call from somebody and they hung up on you.
Rejection letter right there, man.
Yeah.
I doubt that dude gets rejected very often.
He did comment on one of my LinkedIn posts once, and so that was cool. But I don't know. He would be awesome to have on at some point.
He would be awesome. Here, check this out. Here, maybe you can share the screen. But in grad school, I had this hermit crab, and I named it Hermit Aguinis. Hermit Aguinis. I was like pet, and if you'll look, like the like Hermit Aguinis, like gave a thumbs up to it.
Where's the thumbs up? I don't see it.
Scroll down.
Scroll down. Oh, Hermit Aguinis. That's funny.
Oh, it doesn't. You don't have a Twitter account, so it doesn't show you like the comments, I suppose. But yeah, he wrote LOL, which.
That's awesome. So he actually
small win for a grad student,
That's a huge win, man. I love it.
So that's my connection to Herman Aguinis, not Hermit. R.I.P. Hermit, though. Like he had a demise eventually.
Yeah, I don't think hermit crabs live that long.
Not around me.
Well, do you have any specific folks, any like IO-Psychs or non that you'd like to invite on? See if we can get the community to rally around getting them to come.
I see what you're saying. I would love to talk to Ammott, the producer of like essentially the undergrad IO-Psych book. I mean, talk about like a wealth of knowledge there. Hey, shout out to Ammott. You got me through comps. At least give me the structure of my comps notes. Anyway,
yeah, that's smart.
Oh yeah, and there's folks in say like the network analysis. Like once again, I think about people in different segments because I think that they share largely the common knowledge bases.
Yeah.
So it's like trying to get diversity of information from folks.
I'm trying to think.
Anybody else for you, man?
Well, I'm thinking all the time because one of the things I also have is sort of a principle is like don't meet your heroes kind of thing, and I like having people on here that we like one of us or the other knows, and like we know they're like cool to talk with.
Yeah,
and like it's too fun to have somebody on if they like clam up, and so I don't know.
I mean, it's one of the interesting things about doing this pod that we've noticed. Like, as soon as the red light goes on, i.e., you're recording, people change, and it's a totally human reaction. Totally human reaction. We struggled with it, and I don't know. Perhaps we still do. Maybe it's not. I don't know, but or just people maybe different in print, or you build them up in your mind than they actually are in real life too.
Yeah. One guy I've been following a lot lately, and I think I've cited a few of his articles from LinkedIn, is Vin Vashista. He's big in the generative AI space, and I think he does some excellent work there. And obviously, we've talked about Ethan Mullick before.
He'd be fantastic.
He would have been fantastic.
Once again, like if he were to like be fully engaging, I don't know if
Yeah,
a guy that smart, it's hard to say that like they're going to be able to relate to you on a personal level.
you can even say if he was going to show up, like I don't know.
It's like I booked I don't know I booked Nancy Pelosi, but she just keeps not showing up to the pod. I don't know why I picked that name. I was like a big public figure. I booked Trump too. Why not?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not crazy about wading into like any of that stuff, to be honest.
I definitely don't want to do any political stuff. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't occupy my mind, or doesn't even fascinate me.
Well, it's just not. It's not interesting and scientific. Like I think like we can talk about like curling and like fun like going to Scotland, like that's like fun, interesting stuff, and then we can talk about like scientific stuff. But like I don't know, when you get outside of that, it's like I don't know. I don't feel this need to like unnecessarily divide us.
I would love to talk to like a big time musician, because we talked about this like some time ago, that essentially when you're a band, you make a product, and hopefully people enjoy that product, and then you take that product on the road. Like we can't just play at the same club every night. We got to go to a club in Dallas. Now we got to go to Austin. Now we got to go to Edinburgh, wherever. And you become a business. Like you booking shows, and like you got to promote it, and like there's people dynamics in the band, and like everything just becomes like a thing. So I mean, like once again, it's like sort of like a people management space at this point.
I think that's a really good suggestion too. One of the things I would love, especially if a person was really in tune with it, because some people aren't in tune with it as much as others, but if they could really communicate it effectively.
You talking about the drummer?
No, like like somebody who's really in tune with the creative process.
Yeah.
Right. Like that is really in touch with how do you take something, like take nothing, an empty sheet of paper, and leave with like a well-crafted song that people like. That's so multifaceted. If somebody's really in touch with that, it would be really fun to talk about.
I get caught up in these like sort of like YouTube spirals, and like this comes up every so often. Like hear like Billy Corgan talk, or the surviving members of like Nirvana, and it's really wild. Like some songs, I forget names off the top of my head, but it's like some songs I was working on this for 5 years, and it took forever. Others are like, we wrote this entire thing in 14 minutes, and it's a mega hit, and it's amazing. Like Chris Martin from Coldplay, he talked about writing Yellow in like a matter of like 10 minutes.
Really?
And that was like their breakthrough hit.
And that's kind of that's not a simple song, Like I would think if it took like 10 minutes to write, it would be like one of these like really catchy, play the same, 3 chords.
You got a hook. Verse, chorus, verse.
Yeah. And it's actually not like, and so that's fascinating.
But yeah, like understanding the creative process, like I try and do that. I read a lot of innovation work. I read a lot about creativity, and I think the one key takeaway is diversity of information and time to drill down yourself. So like you oscillate between these periods of understanding all the different possibilities that are out there, and then taking time to refine it yourself. That seems to be the common thread. Otherwise, there's no real magic to the sauce,
Well, it's very because I feel like the podcast versus like, because I write a lot of articles too.
Yeah.
It's a very different part of my brain that I'm using for that versus this. And when it comes to like writing, it's very, I don't know. I always say it's like I'm like kind of manic almost. like
you can't get the words out fast enough, sort of deal.
Yeah, it's like you have this spark of inspiration.
Yeah,
and it's like this rush to get all the goodness out before the spark goes away.
Like God came down and touched you. You got to put it on paper somehow.
Yeah, it's like it wasn't until I started writing. I can't remember where I heard this, but somebody was saying like the muses are real. Right. And what they meant by is like you have no control over when like inspiration comes. And it wasn't, I was like, that's baloney. And I started writing, and I realized that is totally real. It was like, because the best ideas seem like they come out of nowhere, and it's like not even your own.
I write a lot for work, and like I understand what you mean, especially like on a small scale. Like I'm trying to write a paragraph, and like in my head, like the perfect sentence comes out, and like you gotta like frantically like get that sentence out before your mind's polluted, man, by other
Yeah.
thoughts.
It's like there's like a competition in your mind for attention. It's like you got to keep it focused on this little thing for just long enough before your attention goes somewhere else.
Speaking of switching attention, I pulled down this thing. Myth busting in people analytics. You want to do some of this?
Yeah.
This is a shocker for Cole. Cole hasn't heard any of this. He'd never even heard. I didn't talk to him about this. Some people would say I never discussed this with Cole before the show. That's a better way to say that.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm curious if I'll agree with whether they're myths or not.
Yeah, we can get through as many as we care to. Yeah. Myth 1. Millennials are job hoppers. So, contrary to popular belief, a study by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics revealed that millennials' job tenure is not significantly lower than that of Gen X at the same ages. Factors like industry, role, economic conditions play more of a significant role.
Well, it makes perfect logical sense that earlier in your career, there's a lot less latency time between roles. And as you progress in your career, there's much more latency between when one role exists and another role exists. And so whether it be job hopping between jobs like in a company or job hopping between companies, there's just a lot more plinko going on in the very beginning. Whereas there's a lot less of that later on. So it makes perfect sense.
It does make sense if you frame it that way. Like early on, maybe you have a job, maybe you have a career. Like if you have a career, you're probably for the longer period of time. Plus, in your 20s, like your life is just way more turbulent. Like you're going to school, or like you get out of school, and like perhaps you find a mate, and that mate goes to school, and like you move. It's like a lot going on in your 20s.
When I've heard a lot, like Aaron Krause and Victoria, one of the girls from our grad school, they had like this running PSYOP presentation they would do every year on it's not generations, it's life stages, and they showed all the research behind it. So I've definitely heard this before.
It is. I understand why this happens though. Like I remember going back to grad school after being in the workforce for several years and just like looking at these students like they're aliens, like just not understanding the motivation that like, oh, you haven't done anything, but you need to prove it, right? And they're plus you're just like at a different sort of like stage where it's like full of like motivations, etc. to drive.
The world is so much more defined back then. Is what I realized. It's like
they're more defined.
Yeah, it's weirdly more and less defined. And what I mean by that is when you're in graduate school, there's absolutely a lot of boundaries around what you're learning. Now, you don't know any of it yet, and so you have a lot of like it's undefined in the sense you have a lot you need to learn. But once you get to those kind of edges of what you need to learn, it's like, all right, I'm good. I got this box checked, right? I know my team's research. I know my personnel research. I know my whatever. And but like when you get outside of graduate school, it's like there are no more boundaries. It's just like, well, you just need to know everything. And so that it's very, I like here's a simple example. How many people leave like Iowa State graduate schools and have never used Excel? Now we can rant and rave about how Excel is terrible, but most companies are going to expect you to have a basic competence in Excel, but that wasn't within the boundaries of what you really needed to know to graduate. And so a lot of people are like, God, I had to learn how to send an email using Microsoft Office and how to use Excel just to get a job.
There ought to be like a practical grad student class. Like, here's how to structure an email. Like, no, you don't need 10 paragraphs if you're going to send it to somebody. Just a simple line is fine. I don't know what like the 10 categories would be, but you could be fairly simple and give people a basic foundation to actually work in the workforce.
Yep.
Okay. Happy employees are always more productive, or actually just productive in general. While employees' happiness is important, it doesn't always translate directly to productivity. A study published in the Journal of Vocational Behavior found that job engagement is more accurate predictor of employee productivity than general satisfaction.
Yeah. I feel like that was like Paul Sackett was one of those big kind of phase shifts
Yeah.
psychology. I remember the switch from job satisfaction to engagement was one of those prior phase shifts that I feel like where all the research up until one point was on satisfaction. Then like all of a sudden overnight, it all switched to engagement. So that's definitely kind of one of those things that changed over time.
It's you can just step back and just look at the world and just like see someone that is like laser focused on their job, or like like look at like a football player that's like freaking fire in their eye, this sort of thing is like they are not happy right now, but they're about to tear shit up.
Yeah, that's fair.
Another myth: remote workers are less engaged. Data from Gallup shows that remote workers can be more engaged than their in-office counterparts. The key is amount of remote work. Those that with hybrid schedule, coming in part-time, etc., have higher levels of engagement than those who are fully remote or always in the office. It's almost like having autonomy and choice is a factor.
Yeah, it is until like somebody doesn't want autonomy, but yeah. This is one of those things where
so someone higher up doesn't want people to have autonomy? Is that what you're saying?
No. Like I'm just thinking there's been so much debate about the whole remote work over the last, 2 years or so.
Yeah.
That I can't almost not talk about this in multivariate terms. Like anybody that says, well, remote work makes you less engaged or more engaged. I'm like, it's a multivariate thing, please. Like it's more than just that.
There is an element of like, well, male workers are like this, women workers are like that. It's like, well, people have
I'm kind of tired of these like
factors.
simplifications that we make as society. It's just it's boring, I don't know.
I will say it's good for people to come into the office at least sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
meet a person, put on some pants, take a shower, maybe. Like I get it. I love working on my bed. Like if I don't even have a desk at the house, which is why I come in the office. Like I sit on my bed and I work. It's terrible sleep hygiene, all the bad things, but
Well,
it's
that's the
also
thing is like
good.
you and yourself are sort of a multivariate equation
Oh
where
yeah.
like you go into the office, but also so that like from the people who are like really pro remote working, they would say, well, that's a negative, right? But then you have what I would call really good boundaries of work-life balance because you're not working in your laptop in your bed all day. And so you like when you leave the office, you have those boundaries, which would be like a plus in the plus column, but it's like, it's always multivariate,
Yeah, I like that nuanced angle that you're playing there. 'Cause, like, I understand the people that got really accustomed to work from home, but a lot of them are like intransigent and just essentially say like, look at this study. It says that if you work from home, you're better off. It's like, I mean, and it gets to be,
Yeah, I think that's where my frustration is. It's like
yeah,
people who are intransigent in the face of new information.
yeah.
Right? Like it's totally fine to advocate for something and say, like, this is my preference. It's like, okay, it's fine, it's your preference, but it might not be everybody's preference.
Hey, you know why there's so many cat photos on the internet?
I don't.
It's because dog people leave the fucking house.
Good one.
There you go.
Yeah.
Money is the best motivator for employees. That's the myth.
Is it?
The actual results may vary. While competitive pay is essential, it's not the sole motivator. Researcher from McKinsey, etc., highlights that non-financial factors like praise from managers, attention from leaders, etc., can development, etc.
Oh yeah.
How many times can I say etc. in one sentence? Are more effective motivating factors.
There's plenty of like economists that have shown like I think it's like 70. Once you're above $70,000 a year, it doesn't affect your satisfaction anymore. I brought that up with a previous leader of compensation at a prior organization, and they said one of the things that the researchers never put as a part of the variables is compensation being a motivator, not because it motivates people to try harder, but motivator in the sense that it's scorekeeping. That
It's the ultimate scoreboard. Yeah.
It's the ultimate scoreboard, and especially at the highest levels of an organization, people, again, it's not motivating them to work harder. It's they want the status and the prestige of having my number is bigger than your number. And I think a lot of, again, psychologists and social scientists neglect that type of thing.
Despite it being like a core a core psychological phenomenon. Have you ever seen the it's a famous video of laboratory monkeys, and they give one monkey a grape,
The
which I think
grape.
is high value, and like they give another what we call it dog kibble, whatever it was, which is like low value. And one monkey's watching the other monkey, and eventually the one that gets the dog food just throws it at the researcher, like, get out of here, this shit.
I have seen that. Yeah. I mean, human beings, this is one of the reasons why I think, psychology and the social sciences are so fascinating is we have things where we desperately want to be alike, and we have ways we desperately want to be different and differentiated from others. And that's, to me, is just fascinating, is that we're such complex creatures.
Yeah.
It's why it's endlessly fascinating to research this type of stuff.
I love comparative psychology. I haven't dug that deep into it, but you look at like a video of I'm making stuff up right now, but like say a bird in distress because their like baby bird fell out of the nest or something like that. It's like
Mhm.
that emotion is the exact same emotion I would see from a mother on the street if their kid fell in a well or down the sewer drain, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like the exact same behaviors. Obviously you got different wings versus arms. Those sort of things. Like at a neurological level, they got to be experiencing the exact same thing.
Oh, yeah. It's because, again, another one of those branches on the phylogenetic tree that
Yeah,
happens.
it's a good point. Back to
Yeah.
it.
Because we're
All right.
basically the same things. We're just like, we're both animals.
All right. Last one. A great company culture means a fun workplace. Cole's already laughing at this one. A study by Deloitte points out that while fun workplace with perks like games rooms and free lunches is nice, a great culture is more about shared values, effective communication, a sense of purpose. Employee engagement and retention are more strongly correlated with these deeper cultural factors than just fun amenities.
I feel like there's like a U-shaped relationship with funness in the workplace and, like where you should be. If it's too fun, that's a problem. If it's not fun enough, that's also a problem. But there's like a medium distance of funness that's probably ideal.
Like you're just like working and like someone hits you in the head with like a Nerf gun. You're like, hey, like
Yeah.
maybe we chill, dude.
Yeah. It's like, chill out, man. Come on.
I worked at a place that had nap pods. They're like,
Mhm.
hey, we're gonna be like a hip, like kind of tech
Yeah.
culture, this sort of thing. And it was great. Like they put them over in front of the windows and looked super nice, and like they're like these cool little modern things. But the company culture was as such that you weren't really allowed to use them, right? Like no one
They were
would
just there to
really,
look at. Yeah.
no one would really accept you sleeping in that nap pod. It just would not be acceptable.
Well, this is very similar. Like I've had this, for a while there, the theory was like ping pong tables was like the signifier that you have a fun place to work. But my rule wasn't whether or not they had a ping pong table. It was whether or not people were actually allowed to play.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's like you can have a ping pong table. If you never see anybody use it, that's actually a really big cultural signifier of like what it's like to work there.
And ping pong tables triggered. I think I told you this a long time ago, but I walked into a call center that's the size of like it was like 8 football fields, so just a massive
Yeah.
room full of just like humanity. And like they didn't have any place to put their like coders. They put them in this like massive call center with the rest of the call center workers, but they're all tech employees. They're making big salaries, and they hooked them up with beanbag chairs and ping pong tables right next to these lower salaried folks. And it's like the optics, the power,
was like,
just oh my god.
it was almost as if one got given a grape and the other one got given dog food.
Kind of. And like one group was told like, no, you can't even,
Yeah.
don't even go over there.
And then they threw the dog food back at the researcher.
But if you do have a great culture, it is wonderful. But like just putting a pinball machine in the break room is not going to do it.
Absolutely.
So I think that this,
no more myths. Are we done with myths? I thought there was
I think that we have done yeoman's work here and dispelled all these myths that keep hounding us.
They're not going to go away, right?
Because you don't think that the work from home culture is going to go, or people have figured out work culture in general.
How about this? All those myths will go away the second that no one ever requests a colors-based personality test at work.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna request a personality that's based in a color for the rest of humankind.
Once again, triggered. I worked at a company briefly, very briefly, that they did transportation research. I won't say anything more than that, but they made you do your MBTI, then walk around with a little like paper hat, like you'd get at like
Yeah.
Cafe Du Monde with like your.
Yeah.
And it's like, I guess this is like, hey, like, look, we're all different, but we work for the same company. Like, we got to understand people's differences. It's like, guys.
Come on, guys.
And I've seen the person at your little blue line is higher than your red line. That means you're like me, whatever.
Well, speaking of artificial differences that don't make any real impact on the world, do you want to talk about soda versus pop?
No, let's skip that. That's not very
Skip that?
good. It's not very
Oh,
good.
okay, I thought that was interesting.
Oh, okay.
Actually.
Well, here let's hit on it. So, I haven't seen this in several days. I apologize, which is why I don't want to talk about. But yeah, in
So they
1947, you go for it.
Yeah, for the people who are just listening, they have this map of the United States and the regions that say Coke versus soda versus pop in 1947 and also in 2023. And so I'll just kind of describe it. In 1947, the pop region is basically all of the Midwest and the upper North Pacific Northwest. The Coke region extends essentially from North Carolina all the way to New Mexico across the South. And soda is in California and Arizona and basically all the Northwest and this like one little splotch in Missouri for some reason. And then you fast forward to 2023, and both Coke and pop have receded dramatically, whereas soda is covering most of the center of the map. Pop is still, I would call in like the rural parts of the Midwest and the Pacific Northwest, but still like large swaths of, like Illinois and Wisconsin and Ohio are now soda areas. And Coke has receded to just parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi, and Alabama. And so it's just fascinating how trends like that have occurred over time.
I haven't really studied like the genealogy of language that well, but so once again, we're talking about like if you order a fizzy, sugary drink, like what do you call it?
Yeah.
And I grew up in Texas, and I was like, I want a Coke. What kind of Coke? Well, I want Dr. Pepper. That's what kind of Coke I want, really.
Well, when I grew up, again, I sincerely had never heard somebody say soda or pop.
Really?
So
Yeah.
I thought it was Coke my whole life. And then I went to work for a competitor of Coca-Cola earlier in my career.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
And that is when I started calling it soda, just to be diplomatic.
Well, that company hires so many people. Maybe they've single-handedly like changed the world there.
Yeah. No, it is, I won't say distressing, but it is a shock when I hear somebody say pop. I'm like, really? This is what we're doing?
Pop is insane. Since I've moved to Seattle, I never really put it together, but I do say soda more often. Like I'm go to the store. If I'm talking to someone from Texas, which I know a few people here, I'll say like I'm gonna go get a Coke. And they know that doesn't mean I'm gonna go get a Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
If someone were to ever say like that they want a pie, now that would freak me out. Back to the pizza.
Oh yeah.
I
guess there are regional differences to pizza. I don't know what they are. I just always called it pizza.
You ever heard of Detroit pizza? Isn't that where they do it like reverse, put like the sauce on the top and the
I've only been to Detroit once. It's not high on my list of cities that I like.
Not a vacation spot for you.
Yeah. Sorry, people from Detroit who listen.
Chicago, like, hey, I'm about to make some enemies here, but I mean, it's a lot. That's all I'm saying. Like, eat a slice of deep dish pizza. That's an intense day, and you only need one.
I love it, and that's why I asked you earlier about Seattle if there were like any regional things. Because one of the things I found is I go to somewhere and I try to try the regional dishes, whatever they may be, and I find that I really end up liking them just because of that ineffable quality of like, okay, this is what you're known for,
Yeah, you'd have to dig deep into the Seattle culture because there's not like a New York style pizza or a this sort of thing. But what they do have around the city, so there's a place called Rain City Burgers, and there's a hot dog stand in the Seattle Center, kind of where I live, and another place. Anyway, it's their bit is they put cream cheese on burgers, hot dogs,
Yeah.
these sort of things. And I think if I had to distill it, that might be the Seattle culinary experience.
Yeah. Well, it's like in like San Diego, I can't remember what it's called, but they have like these burritos that have like French fries in them, and it's like really.
I'm down with that, dude.
Yeah, it's
Hell
fantastic.
yeah. Give me that right now.
Yeah, I was like, I wish they had that in Texas. Like that should be everywhere.
I had a friend talking about he went to Miami and got it was a hot dog with pineapple and potato chips. And like I was like, I get it. The sweet and the salty just mixed. Hell yeah,
I'd have to try it. It depends on the type of. You said it's on a hot dog?
Yeah.
It depends on the type of hot dog, like the actual meat of the hot dog would be. I would be very particular about that. But if you had the right kind of meat, I could see that working.
Man, I don't like horse meat. I don't know. Like what were the different hot
No,
dog
like
meats?
some more like that would never go with like a bratwurst or something like that. Like I don't think I could stomach it.
They don't hold together the way they should in your mouth. It's weird.
Yeah.
I don't like the texture.
But anyway, I think we're getting a little off here.
Yeah. Well, I got something for you. We can call this the confusion matrix. We can call it whatever you want.
The confusion matrix.
You got something?
No, I would love to. Let's dig in. I don't think I know what's coming here either. So let's
You
have
don't
fun.
know. You don't know. But you, sir, did work at Waffle House
briefly
for a while.
You keep overselling my stint at Waffle House.
You owned a Waffle House. You are the franchisor of Waffle Houses. You're on the logo.
It sounds like it's not a bad business, so I might do that someday.
I've got 12 facts about Waffle House, and you can guess. How about that? We'll just make it to a game.
Okay.
And we can go as quickly or slow as we care to, and it doesn't really matter, right? Which city in America has the most Waffle Houses? You may know these. Like they may have told you this in training. I don't know.
I mean, I'm gonna guess like Jacksonville, Florida, or something like that.
It's a pretty good guess. Atlanta. They have 132 Waffle Houses. And by the way, this segment goes out to all of our Belgian waffle lovers out there. Not Belgian waffle lovers, just people in Belgium.
Yeah, just the people that
love
no
waffles.
Idea. Yeah.
When and where was the first Waffle House?
Oh, I probably should have known that when I worked there. I'm gonna say like 1901 or something like that. In Virginia.
Yeah, not too far outside of Atlanta. It's Avondale Estates, Georgia, in 1955. But like you make a good point. Like if someone's like the first Waffle House opened in 1822, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. If they said it was like 1980, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense.
You could have told me that Paul Revere ate at Waffle House before he rode his ride, and I would have believed you.
He was there all night. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why was Waffle House named as it is?
I mean, I feel like the name was self-explanatory. It's like a place you get waffles.
I think that's totally fair. We'll give you credit, like a little ding there. But it was named after the highest profit item, which apparently was a waffle on the original menu. Is there? We can skip that one. That's bullshit. How many waffles does Waffle House serve per minute? I guess it's around the world.
I remember how McDonald's used to have like the number of burgers served, and it was like 9 billion burgers or something. I feel like there's like a math equation here we could do, like the number of golf balls that fit in an airplane type of thing to try to deduce this. But I don't know. I'm just gonna say 20,000 just to have fun with it.
Even Snoop Dogg thinks you're too high.
Okay.
It's 145 waffles per minute.
Oh, okay. Well, I was way off.
I like my line there. There you go. Shit, I can't see. Oh, is it true that Waffle Houses have no locks on the door because they're open 24 hours a day?
I think they have locks. They just probably don't use them.
Yeah, that's correct. They do, in fact, have locks. Do you know what the Waffle House Index is? And it's used by FEMA. This is actually really fascinating.
Waffle House Index used by FEMA, and you're talking about the disaster relief part of the
Yeah.
government.
It's a good people analytics sort of deal.
I have no idea.
So FEMA uses the Waffle House Index to measure the severity of natural disasters. It assesses the impact based on whether local Waffle Houses are open or closed in an area. So if they're open, it's not that
better
bad.
Indicators than that.
I love the proxy measures, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, they used to be able to sell Chick-fil-A. Can you make reservations on Valentine's Day? Yes, in fact, you can.
That must be a new edition. You could not make reservations in the past.
All the good old boys taking their ladies out for what is Waffle House Records?
Oh, those are those don't exist very much anymore, but they had the jukeboxes and
Very
all the
good.
Waffle Houses. Yeah, that was
very good, man. Do they test new items? Yes, they do. Why was Waffle House also known as Waffle and Steaks in Indiana?
I assume because they sold steak as well.
Another chain had the naming rights to Waffle House, so they changed the name. And so for everyone that isn't around a Waffle House or doesn't enjoy Waffle House as much as we do, there you go.
We already lost them.
Yeah, that's fair.
We're down to 0 listeners, but it's okay.
I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this for you.
Like, how long are people willing to stay?
But between that and myth busting, like I think they're like, yeah, we're gonna check out for the day.
It is totally fine. Well, do you want to do some nerdery? I think we have a smattering of stuff to talk about. So
yeah.
The Nerdery.
Where do you want to start?
I want to start with one just because we hit on it a bunch there for a while and then haven't talked about it recently about paper mills. And so this is not like paper mills that make paper like a factory. These are groups of people, usually in developing countries, who are like getting together, like large groups of people, and just submitting just tons and tons of scientific papers and to journals, and then all citing each other, so they all like have this like mutual citation agreement. And what they found is like this is a really big problem with doing high quality science, because we're already saying like the paper mills are submitting a lot of junk science, but they've even upped the ante. And this is from the journal Science, so this is a very credible place, saying that some paper mills are starting to bribe journal editors to get their papers passed.
Of course.
And I was like, again, we've talked about the issues of incentives and the role that they play in why people, do ethical versus unethical behavior. And if the incentives are so high for people to get, enough citations in top journals, to get tenure or whatever it may be or to get research funding at your university, you're going to see issues where people will say, well, it's, it caught like my raise at becoming a tenured professor is going to be this much higher than what I make now. I'm willing to contribute 10% of my salary to bribe some journal editors. If we all pool our money together, we can all, get tenure together. And so this is a real phenomena, and why, trust in scientific papers is decreasing, because like this is something that's happening. And so I just wanted to bring this up as a PSA. I don't know. You have any thoughts on this?
So I mean, like you hit on, like incentives lead to motivation, which leads to these sort of things, and like scientific integrity be damned, because they don't pay the bills, the bribing a editor to get your paper through is horrific, but also colluding with fellow authors to essentially develop a citation network where everyone mutually benefits is collusion. Is plain and simple. We don't have it as much in, say, psychological research, but you'll see it in like medical practice, like these papers with 30 authors on it. And I think it's just like, hey, add me to your paper, I'll add you to my paper, and like we'll both get a couple citations, and that'll look good in our CVs, etc. I don't know how you combat it at this point. So once again, like you would need to like fundamentally change the incentives of the journals, the research institutions, and the actual authors.
I think, I mean, if you would have asked me 3 or 4 years ago, I would have given you a totally different answer on this. But with all the evidence I've seen lately, I mean, and this is going to come up in one of the later articles I have about, even the president of Harvard just resigned. And like
Yeah,
we had seen
yeah.
the Stanford president having to resign recently. And like there's some pretty systemic issues that are going on. I mean, we may be at a point where we got to revisit all the science that's been done in like the last 30 years to make sure it's still, relevant.
Just a lot of thoughts there, and a little pause there. Yeah, it's really worrying, especially like we had Corday on like a year ago, and he said
Yeah.
something to the effect of like what 30%. He was on the impression that like 30% of all IO articles were, if not fabricated, but based on fabricated data in some way or form.
It all comes down to trust. Like you have to be able, like if you think of like science as like the foundation of decision making,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
good
then you
point.
start to realize that the foundation is like very porous, and they mixed in Play-Doh with concrete. Like, well, we're gonna have some problems. Like, can we
Well,
make real decisions based on this stuff?
I could handle like inaccurate information out there, as long as all the information was published and it was fast. Like, so at least you would have a course correction, or at least get a nice, say, a funnel plot of say effect sizes around a phenomenon. Then you can at least say like, these are outliers; they're not accurate. But I mean, if the incentives are to find positive results, and the incentives are to get published, and we know this from some of our previous articles we've covered, it's like you got to have novel findings, they got to be impactful, they got to like move the needle, because it's not necessarily about the finding, it's about selling the journal to people that would read it.
Well, and that, I mean, I don't remember the exact specifics of it, but that was like the whole Stanford president issue is like he had this lab where he pitted graduate student groups against each other that were all in his lab and said, like, the more novel things that you find, the more likely I am to like, incentivize you in some way. And then all of a sudden, all his papers got retracted because they, again, I'm probably using hyperbole here, but like they were fabricating the results.
But I do like the process of we don't do enough, say, exploratory research in IO. Like there is value to just, I don't know, putting things into a ML model and just seeing what shakes out the back end, and then you can develop theory around it, do more rigorous testing later on. But
But there was even a point in time not that long ago where saying that would have been anathema to our community.
yeah, absolutely. I
Right.
mean, I understand it doesn't jive with the scientific method, as far as like we've researched this topic, we've we developed a strict hypothesis, etc. But
What's the difference between inductive and deductive types of reasoning? And we have overcorrected, in my opinion, towards completely deductive ways of doing things, and which requires a scientific method. But it's like, let's just find some stuff and let's generate some hypotheses from what we find using inductive methods sometimes too.
here, I think this melds well with another article we have, an urgent call for Iowa psychologists to produce timelier technology research. So it's actually quite fascinating. It's not P-Psych. What is this? IO Perspectives.
Yeah.
So they took data from 23 previous PSYOPs and found that research regarding emerging technology doesn't actually occur for 6 years after the introduction of the technology.
Yep.
So like think the advent of, say, like the internet, and then like 6 years later you get internet based testing, something like that. And like that's a long delay. And I mean, just think about where we were, hell, 2 years ago. Think about where we were like 10 years ago. It's like,
Yep.
we're moving faster and faster and faster. And these long delays, once again, with the research publication cycle, is just.
Well, it's not just the publication cycle. It's like the interest of researchers, the access of the data of those researchers to have, and then the reward system of like sometimes journals won't even do like a call for papers on a particular topic till years later. And
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so there's no motivation to go do this type of research. But, I feel like you could have written this article at any time in the last 30 years and it would have been just as relevant.
I got this new thing called the telephone.
Yeah.
Like, what's his name? Oh my God, why am I blanking?
I don't know.
Not Hawthorne. The guy that walks around PSYOP, the mystery guy.
Mystery guy at PSYOP. This is interesting.
Oh my God, I can't believe it. Munsterberg.
Oh, yeah. I kind of know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Like, we got these people plugging in the phone lines into the system. How to make it more productive.
I think Charles Handler was that.
He was Munsterberg. Man,
I think so. Or maybe he knows. I feel like I saw him post something about that.
This is like salacious stuff you're revealing here, man.
Maybe, I might be completely in left field. So, Charles, I apologize if that's not you.
I love outing him as like Deep Throat or something.
Oh, I thought he outed himself. I thought that was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, maybe I'm again. I might be making this up, but I
could see it, man. Charles Handler. He does seem like the type. He's a little out there. Kind of has that personality, good enough personality to pull it off.
Yeah. Sorry, Charles.
We're on to you, Charles. I think that's the main takeaway here.
Yeah. Would you mind if I do some Aguinis since
I do some Aguinis? Absolutely.
Wrote my love letter to him earlier, or Aguinis as some people call it.
You're gonna have to tell me who that was later.
Yeah, well. So the article from Journal of Business Venturing Insights is called "Under the Weight of Heavy Tails: A Power Law Perspective on the Emergence of Outliers in Entrepreneurship." And so what they essentially go through is, you could even call it like it's a well-trodden area now of, just overlaying the power law onto different areas and finding, once again, things are not normally distributed. They actually fit a power law better.
Yeah.
That there's actually just a few outlier startups that account for a disproportionate amount of the output and value in this space, which is the whole premise behind the venture capital model of funding. And so they just have a bunch of data in here that shows that, in entrepreneurship, it also follows the power law. And so I thought this is another fascinating example of the power law versus the Gaussian, bell curve being a big factor in the world that we live in. I don't know. Did you get a chance to look at that one?
I did not look at that. And a follow-up question, like, so what is the power law? So like, they're entrepreneurs and like their ability to be successful. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's the power law is like the 80-20 distribution, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a normal distribution follows a bell curve. The power law says, something like 20% of companies account for 80% of the value, right? Or sometimes it's like as low as like 1% of the companies account for 50% of the value. So it becomes steeper and steeper and steeper as you go up. And what they found is that they studied, I think, 22,000 ventures across 32 samples, and that these these enterprises, their annual revenue distribution followed the power law with an exponential cutoff, and the same thing, funny enough, with the employee distribution, meaning the number of employees that that these businesses had. So it's not just how much money they make; it's how many people they employ as well. And so it's just a fascinating finding.
Yeah, in network analysis parlance, this would be called, like, say, the Matthew effect. So you get like preferential attachment towards certain companies. So for whatever reason, they get, once again, touched by God, and in some sort of way, either through a better product or better marketing or just the luck at hand or placement, etc. And it makes sense. Like, some companies survive, even the ones that don't necessarily have the best product. They tend to rise to the top. And it did just like Aguinis's other articles on star performers. Some people produce disproportionate value over others.
Yep.
And those are the golden eggs or whatever.
And the Matthew effect is to he who is given something, everything will be given, and to he who has nothing, everything will be taken, or something like that.
Yeah. So like the rich get richer is a different way to say that. So
fascinating. I've got another one real quick. And
Wow,
this is
we're doing like a nerdery hit around. I love this.
Let's do it, man. It's Cole and Scott episode. We can do whatever we want.
I'm gonna take my shirt off
if you want. So this one was a recent one, and it's kind of related to the thing I was mentioning about the president of Harvard just resigned for plagiarism claims. But Josh Burson published something about our diversity and inclusion programs going away in light of the affirmative action ruling from the Supreme Court and what's going on at Harvard and everything. And I think the thing here is I'm not sure all the letters in the DEIB, and I've even seen people add an A recently about accessibility, are all going in the same direction. Because he says our diversity and inclusion programs going away. If you just use the D and the I think those are absolutely staying around. Right?
What's B? What would B be?
Belonging.
Okay.
Right.
I'm obviously not hip on my DEI terms.
Yeah, and so they're always adding letters, But I think the reality is like any company that's focusing on outreach and being more inclusive and trying to tap different talent pools from different backgrounds, they're absolutely going to be successful in the marketplace. And I think we've talked about this a whole bunch. It's when people start putting the thumbs on the scales, and I think this is what the affirmative action ruling talked about, and what's going on at Harvard is being talked about. It's like it's when you're really trying to like artificially create something. That's when things go awry. And so I think you can do diversity and inclusion programs even more effectively in the coming years. I don't see them going away. It's just when you get into the thumbs on the scales aspect that I think that's where we're going to go wrong. I don't know. I guess you probably didn't have a chance to read this one, but do you have any thoughts?
Yeah. So like, we saw it earlier in the sort of myth busting that like being included in the work, being part of the team, being accepted, all fantastic for engagement, which later leads to productivity for the organization. Fantastic. What's difficult is to show the value. I think that's where a lot of DEI programs have a difficult time. A business is there to make money, ostensibly for the shareholders, really. And everything needs to have a business value. And DEI programs have not, and they have a hard time showing their value from a business sense.
I think even sometimes they're pretty good at showing value. It's like sometimes the programs are like anti-value. Like they're like, we're going to consciously try not to show value. It's like, well, that's going to rub you up against, the model of trying to make money.
Yeah.
It's just going to be tough.
You need a bottom line. And I think that we as IOs could do more research here or like develop a better model to show the value. Because we know that it exists. We know it's a good idea. We know that people have good outcomes if they do feel included, et cetera, like I just said. But trying to show that from a business perspective has, for whatever reason, been a struggle. Other than like it's the right thing to do, which I think is where a lot of companies are right now.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we've even talked about it on here a bunch, like the benefits to businesses in a local context, but also at an organizational level of, diversity of their workforce, diversity of ideas, diversity of thought. And like, I mean, there's tons of science that shows support of that. And even like work that I haven't read about recently, but like on the terms like anti-fragility. Like you want to be able to like, if everybody's the same and there's one small change to a business, the business is screwed because they don't have any kind of ability to be, to be resilient to any kind of changes because they don't have the ideas. If you have some kind of monoculture, right? But if you have that homogeneity, you can encounter a bunch of different things as a business, and the world is changing very rapidly. So homogeneity is probably more important than ever. It's again, I think the issue
heterogeneity.
Or what did I say? Homogeneity.
I
said the opposite. My bad. Heterogeneity.
No worries.
Yeah, sorry. You know what I meant. But yeah, heterogeneity is really important. It's just the artificial, like creating heterogeneity, like on the backs of something else. Like that's where I think things go wrong.
It's a sticky question, like because we know that homogenous teams tend to produce results more quickly. Heterogeneous teams tend to bring in diverse perspectives and get a righter answer.
Yeah.
This sort of thing. So it's a tension. It's a tension in organizations, but
it's like the whole quantity versus quality debate all over again, Well, did you want to do one last one on software engineers?
Oh, yeah, sure. So This is gender differences in personality of software developers. And it's a pretty interesting study. It uses the Hexaco model and network analysis of the items of the Hexaco. Um, I refer to it, I've heard it referred to as causal attitude networks, i.e., Nathan Carter, or psychometric network analysis. We interviewed somebody from Tal Reyes. Who was that? She
That
was
was Nicole Lettich.
Nicole Lettich. Shout out there if you're listening, still listening after all this time. But what they found is women software developers. They interviewed, they tested like 700 or something like that. I can't remember the actual stats, but women have higher openness, honesty and humility, and emotionality. Men tend to be higher on psychopathic traits. So they have like the dark triad in there. I can see it.
Yeah.
I can see it. But I mean, it's a great use of the Hexaco, which we usually talk about the big five. It's a little bit different. They have a great table in here if you want to know the differences between the Hexaco and the high and
But
low
isn't I
scores.
thought the Hexaco model was essentially the big five, except you added honesty, humility
Yeah,
on top.
there you go. There it is right there.
Yeah.
And they also have a great table on the dark triad too.
Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism.
Yeah.
I feel like they added one more to that, but I can't remember what it is. So
It's I don't know. I've not heard that. That'd be an interesting thing to talk about. It's a liberal interpretation, but yeah, to be a software developer, you kind of got to be a psychopath. Like you just talk about long hours of coding with very little contact with outside humans and like it, you know.
yeah, I always, I go through these things where sometimes you hear a word so many times I forget what it means.
Yeah.
And so people use colloquially the term like, "Oh, he's a psychopath." So many times I'm just like, what does it even mean? And it's actually good to refresh. So in
Yeah.
here it says it's characterized by antisocial behavior such as lack of empathy or remorse. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a psychopath. Okay, good.
It's also low planning, something like that. You're just like
Yeah,
not goal directed.
sure. They have a like what differentiates high from low scores, but it's pretty long. I'm not going to read the whole thing.
Yeah, Machiavellianism is essentially sadist.
So I thought maybe that is what that is sadism. That's the one they added in.
Oh, okay. Someone
It's,
bifurcated it, or
yeah, they added it was I think it's or maybe it's like yeah, so it was Machiavellianism, psychopathology, narcissism, and sadism. Because like actually I think Machiavellianism is all about the famous Machiavelli like the ends have to justify the means.
yeah.
Right? And so, you're willing to break any rule as long as it gets you to your objective, but it's not necessarily like you hate people like sadists. They I think they take pleasure in other people's pain.
It's fun to like try to apply these to people, but I mean, like you're talking like the super high end of the scales to actually find.
Yeah.
If you found one of these people, you'd want to avoid them like plague.
Well, think of it like a math problem. It's like each of these are its own continuum on a personality
Yeah,
scale,
absolutely.
right?
We all have a
And
little bit in us.
yep, and all the continuums are normally distributed. They're not power law shaped,
Yeah.
right? And so to be on like really like let's say 2 standard deviations above the mean, on 4 different scales, that becomes a really small number of people really quickly, just mathematically speaking. So yeah, I mean but I guess those people when they do exist can create a lot of havoc.
But yeah, hey, lady software developers, you're higher in openness and honesty.
Well, and just we're sorry if you have to deal with the
Well,
sadists.
I mean, we haven't really talked about this, but I hear this in programs like STEM programs where women feel what do they call it, like organizational chilling, where like they don't feel welcome in
Really?
these sort of groups because like you get people that just don't know how to like socially interact, or like they are higher on like psychopathy, this
Well,
sort of
this goes
thing.
back to the point I was making on the D&I thing. Is like inclusion and belonging programs are not going anywhere because these kind of things are going to persist in the workplace.
Yeah.
It's like, we've got it. I mean, just for pure business, like capitalist purposes, if you're taking talent off the chessboard, just because people are being, douches,
Yeah.
well, you're going to, from a business needs standpoint, you're going to create programs to try to decrease the amount of douches.
I like that full circle nature. Like I was arguing, you need to show business value. That is the business value.
Exactly.
To retain your workforce.
You know how expensive software engineers are? I mean, geez.
Oh my God. There's a great account of a TikTok of this guy who pretends to be like an Amazon SDE, and he bounces back and forth between Microsoft, which is across the lake here, and he's like, I'm only making like 575,000 comp, and they expect me to work a full like 12 hours a week. Like, this is not sustainable. This sort of stuff.
This is where I lose my faith in humanity. All right, man.
I think we're good. This has been a wild ride.
Yeah, this has, and we lost everybody, 45 minutes ago.
If you made it this far,
we appreciate you and salute you. But well, you've been listening to Directionally Correct, a People Analytics podcast with Cole and Scott. Thanks for listening.
Hey guys, Directionally Correct is dedicated to you, our listeners, to help educate and entertain you on how to effectively do people analytics. By supporting this podcast, you are helping us continue to provide valuable insights and knowledge to our listeners. Please consider becoming a patron of the podcast. You can find the link to sign up in the show notes or at patron.podbean.com/directionallycorrect. Thanks for your support.